Welcome, welcome, welcome. So we want to ask that if you are with us, that you go ahead and seek somebody out, share this link with them so that they will get this message, because we have a very special guest today, and that's David Moffett. He's a Marine, a protector, a provider, a husband. He's the kind of man who never missed a step until a routine appointment changed everything. So today, he isn't just a survivor, he is an advocate on a mission. Not just to raise awareness, but also to break the silence. And we'll hear more about David's inspiring story on this edition of the If You Are My Brothers podcast. Stay with us.
So we have a confirmation with a second opinion that he definitely has prostate cancer.
Well, welcome to this edition of the If You Are My Brothers podcast. We created this to break the silence around prostate cancer. I'm Reggie Hicks. I'm producer of If You Are My Brothers, the documentary and the community engagement project, as well as this podcast series, where we call it really Prostate Cancer Conversations. And happy holidays to everyone. We thank you. We welcome you if you're watching on YouTube and Facebook or LinkedIn Live, and to those listening on your favorite podcast platforms. This is the last show of 2025, so we're looking forward to a great new year. But before we begin, quick reminder, this podcast is not a substitute for your medical team. Some conversations may be of an adult nature, so we also want you to listen accordingly and also consult your healthcare provider about any of your personal health decisions. So that's out of the way. Want to remind you too, before we bring David on, that we have a year-end fundraising campaign that's going on. Some of you may have received an email about this. We've been fortunate and blessed to have a $6,500 challenge grant from 3 of our major donors. Now, here's what this challenge grant thing means. They have provided the funds, but with one caveat. That is that we have to match the $6,500 before the end of the year. So you can go to ifyouaremybrothers.org/donate. That's ifyouaremybrothers.org, and you can do /donate to go to our fundraising page. We've got until the 31st to match the grant. We're about 60% there. So we're getting closer and closer every day. And want to thank you, those in advance, for making the contribution, for supporting this effort. Kind of started off just by trying to do what I can do in this effort. And we've just been so blessed to continue. And we thank you in advance for your support. We also want to thank you in advance for joining this conversation. And this is a conversation, so you can ask your questions in the chat. You can let us know what's on your mind. And if you've got a question for myself or I guess David, we want to hear from you. And also to share this particular podcast with others. Again, to learn more about the podcast, you can go to our website. You just saw it up there, ifyouaremybrothers.org. You'll hear all about and learn all about not just the podcast, but the documentary, the community engagement efforts. We're out in the community talking to men and families about changing health awareness into health action. So that being said, I want to introduce you to our guest, David Moffett. He's a prostate cancer survivor and veteran, understands what it means to protect others. What began as a private battle became a public assignment. David is the founder of Courage and Strength to Fight, Inc., a nonprofit dedicated to creating safe spaces where men can openly talk about prostate cancer, the fear, the treatment, the aftermath, the healing. He's also founder of the DMOF Prostate Cancer Support Group. Heard a lot about that. We're going to talk about that as well, where men and increasingly women gather to break the silence that is costing too many lives. So David, first of all, thank you. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for your service to our country, and thank you for your service to getting the word out to men about this thing called prostate cancer. So we really appreciate you being here. I know it took a minute, but you're here.
Thank you, brother Reggie. I'm humbled. I'm honored, man. And I'm just, I'm thankful for the connection. Truly. humbled and being able to speak with you intentionally, man, to have this real conversation, brother.
Same here, man. And as we get started, let's tell everybody who David Moffett is beyond the diagnosis. Tell us a little bit about who you are in the abbreviated version.
So I'm a husband, a father, grandfather, son, brother, 57 years old, Christian. This advocacy is really about my faith walk, just to be real transparent. And as you already said, a Marine and just a brother out here trying to help save lives, man, and be a blessing. And hopefully others see Christ in me in this service that God has me doing. So that's me in a nutshell, brother.
Wonderful. I tell you, I'm glad you're out here doing what you're doing. And so you're involved in this now, but tell me about prostate cancer. What do you know about it before it entered your life? And when did you learn that prostate cancer was, I think, was in your family, right? So, here's this thing coming out of left field or whatever, but when you were diagnosed, did you kind of understand what this prostate thing was?
No, I had no clue. I had a yearly physical exam and my PSA numbers moved outside of that 4 range, that's 0 to 4. And they referred me to go see a urologist. Really caught me off guard because at the time I thought I was pretty healthy. And I'm looking and I'm like, why do I have to go to a pee doctor? I'm not having any erection issues, not having any blood, no pain or anything like that. And I didn't even know a urologist. And so that caused me a little pause. But to be fully transparent, I only heard about my father, my grandfather, and my stepfather's prostate journeys through the women in my life. After I was diagnosed, going through the journey, they started sharing their journeys with me. And so I was upset, man. No, I'm not going to say I was upset. I was pissed off because all 3 men were influencing my life, especially my father, my grandfather. They were my role models. So it always bothered me. And I always wondered why we couldn't have those conversations or why they felt like they couldn't talk to me in those moments.
Did you ask them did you confront and say, hey,
Man, they all deceased, brother.
Even before you were able to have that conversation, huh?
Yeah, man. So during my journey, they weren't here anymore. So it tugged on me for a while. But, as you talked about the DMOP support group, there's been a couple gentlemen that are in their 70s, late 70s, that have been able to impart, I should say, that conversation that I could have with my dad, my grandfather, or my stepfather, and kind of fill in that gap a little bit, right? But God also showed me, man, maybe they didn't know how to have the conversation or they didn't have the tools to be able to have the conversation to have it with me. So I really believe God put me on this assignment to break the stronghold in my family.
Yeah. And others too. Just, stopping this whole generational thing of misunderstanding and not relaying to other family members. And even when you do, I remember a brother that kind of is the impetus for this whole project, Ralph, and how he tried to speak out during a family reunion, right? You got all the family members there, and he was trying to tell them he had been diagnosed, real aggressive form of prostate cancer. He was trying to explain to them what was going on and how he found out it was prevalent in their family. And the older brother, who's, was like running the whole family reunion, wouldn't let him speak to the group. He was like, no, I don't know if he thought it was a downer, and he didn't. So, Ralph had to basically pull people aside to talk about, how prostate cancer had affected their family. So let's take a moment and tell me, how'd you find out? When did you find out? And what was your first emotional reaction when you heard that C word come out of a doctor's? I would have assumed that the doctor told you. It's not something hopefully you didn't see in the my chart or some portal, right?
Oh man, I was diagnosed in 2019. After we found out my numbers and they referred me to a urologist, I found a urologist. I picked a urologist when I went to see a urologist, even before I had my biopsy. I just basically picked him because what I read on the front desk in the lobby area where he went to school seemed like he was a pretty jammed up cat. I work for a healthcare system, one of the largest here in Georgia. I was feeling pretty comfortable, pretty confident. Really, my healthcare system doesn't like when I tell this story, but it's my story, so I tell it. After my biopsy, I work for security services at this healthcare system. I used to anyway. When I was told, I was standing at the front desk at the training center. He didn't ask me, could I talk? He didn't ask me whether I was in a good place to have the conversation. Did I have any support with me? He just said basically, Mr. Moffett, you have cancer. I was standing in a lobby full of people. Bruh, my knees buckled, and my coworker looked at me and said, hey man, are you good? And I think he caught my arm, and the only thing I could think of is how am I going to tell my wife? Do I call her or do I wait till I get home? And I don't even remember what I did, to be honest with you. I don't know if I called her or got home, but when I heard that, I was devastated, bruh. I was devastated.
I tell the story and I say this all the time. I think a lot of men who go through this can agree. When the doctor, after he said it, it was like what the parents and the school teacher on Peanuts. All I heard was won't, 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 won't. Now my wife heard all the stuff he was saying, but I didn't hear any. It took me a while to just sort of come back. It was really surreal, and considering my situation where I was actually doing a documentary about somebody else and just kind of going along with the process, even though my PSA wasn't that high, it had been going up, exponentially over a short period of time. And I'm thinking, I'm healthy, is no way. And so I really was not prepared. But I thought it would make good TV. I was like, this would be great for the documentary if the producer goes through this, process. Not ever in my wildest dreams thinking that was going to be the prognosis. I was like, yeah, I get it. So after that, you went home, you made I would imagine the decision, because I talked to some guys, and one of the things after they find out is, who do I tell? When do I tell? And like, I might tell my significant other, but I may hold off telling the children. Some men are like, I know that maybe I have prostate cancer. I got to get a biopsy and stuff, but I'm not going to say anything until I get the results, which I can understand that. So when you went to talk to her, what was that? What was that like? Do you remember?
I was busted, man. I don't think there were many words that were coming out of my mouth. She was just very supportive when I got home, and it was crazy. We were like, let's just get out the house. And we actually drove to the Walmart and we picked up a couple of things, I believe. We were looking for dinner. And it's crazy, man, because we ran into some friend of ours. I used to coach youth football and basketball, and ran into a couple that they both work for this healthcare system as well, but I also coached their son back in the day with my son. And they walked up, and his wife is a nurse practitioner. At the time, she was a nurse. So, we said, hey, how you doing? We, greetings and stuff like that. And I think I was in a daze, and I believe my wife said, Dave just got the diagnosis. He has cancer. And they both looked at us like, what?
This was the same day, right?
The same day, yeah. And her husband was like, no, not Coach Dave, not Coach Dave. But she was serious. She was like, look, I'm here. If you have any questions, you understand. I have patients I deal with. Don't miss any of your appointments. If you don't understand anything, you can have me as a resource. You have my number. So that was reassuring and a blessing. And I'll tell you the caveat after that, man, probably within 2 months from that conversation, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer. So just know, in that conversation, he also had prostate cancer. Didn't even know it.
Yeah, and the other part is, you were being an advocate in your wife before you even got into your first day, you were letting somebody know. And I would imagine that announcement in that Walmart probably made his wife in particular say, oh, you need to make sure you be watching, because you hear something like that. And I talk to especially women all the time that say, well, I'm gonna make sure my husband or whomever gets to, know their numbers and that kind of thing, even if they don't. And that may be him doing that. You're saying that, and 2 or 3 months later, finding out that he had it, he might have been like paying attention. So you were an advocate even then. So when you heard about it, when you talked to your wife and they told you had prostate cancer, you had already gone through the biopsy procedure and all of that, right? So you pretty much knew what it could mean if you get it. And so how did the treatment process go with you? How did you decide? What did you decide? What was that like?
It was a little struggle because my ex-wife had passed the cancer a couple of years before, and I knew I had to tell our children.
How old were your kids?
Ooh, they're young adults. So at the time, they were young adults. But I'm like, how do I tell them? Because they just lost their mom with cancer, and now tell them that their dad's got the C word, right? How are they going to take it? It didn't take me long. Called a Sunday dinner and had them come to the house, and we talked about it, because at the end of the day, I felt like this is real life, right? They're going to have to deal with it in their own ways, right? And also, also, like we talked about, I had to be able to be open when my grandfather, my dad, and my stepfather weren't open. God was really just teaching me I think he was teaching me the vulnerability piece. And so, in that being diagnosed, I think, like all men, we hear the C word, and then the next thing we thinking about is the D word. The penis, the dick, right? Excuse my French, but how's this going to impact my erections or me having sex or my sexual function?
I thought about that D word, but I also thought about the other D word, which was death. So,
Yeah.
I was like, okay. I think I got to the death part before I got to the other part. But anyway, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And for me, it took a minute, man, because I know I was against radiation 5 days a week. So that for me, that wasn't even an option on the table. And even with my first urologist, he triggered my PTSD in the office. He was very condescending, belittling, and just, he wasn't able to relate to me. And so I almost walked up out of that office. He begged me to stay and, see one of his partners. And I ended up seeing one of his partners, which he became like a godsend. He's like a real friend. And the first thing he told me was like, look, I'm gonna treat you like my family member. And that meant everything to me. He met me where I was at. Also, he said, look, if your wife, your mother, your sister, your kids, anybody, your grandkids want to come to your appointments, they're welcome. Matter of fact, they were asking more questions than I was. And I'm looking at them like, what? Like, really? Like, why are you asking that? Like, but that's part of being a caregiver, right? That's part of your support group that you need to go through it. But he did tell me about the radiation. He was like, bro, I just need you to get the overall picture of everything, and then you can make an informed decision. Then I was like, okay, I went to see the radiologist oncologist. He did his spiel. I still wasn't on board with that, even though I had the information. And then he was kind of like leaning towards active surveillance. But at the end of the day, man, when the rubber hit the road, I was like, I don't think I could keep moving, knowing that I had this cancer inside my body, waking up every day, knowing that this is here and just kind of watching it every 3 or 6 months. So at that point, I decided to go ahead and get the surgery done and have my prostate removed.
So when you had it done, what was your when you went through that and the biopsy, what was your PSA?
4.8. Before that, it was 3.8. Yeah. So once it jumped outside that 4, that's when I got the call to find a urologist. It's crazy, man, because I had one of my good friends that was in my military unit. He had prostate cancer in his early 40s. And he was like my reference. So I called him and I was like, bruh, my PSA is 4.8. And this is even before I was diagnosed, before we got the pathology report back. And I think his was in the teens, something in the teens. So when I told him, I was like, yo, man, mine's 4.8, man. I was scared. And he's like, bro, calm down. It's right outside the 4. You good. Don't worry about it. And I remember we got that pathology report and it wasn't in one quadrant or half of my prostate. That the stuff was all in my prostate. Those numbers are just, you know what I'm saying? They're numbers in your Gleason score, but everybody's different, right? Like somebody could have 20 something and your Gleason score could be just as somebody like a 4.8 or even under a 4, right? Just learning that, through this process, through this journey and just being educated. But yeah, when I heard that 4.8, I was shocked. And when I talked to my boy, I was like, I had a little comfort. But when I got that pathology report and it was confirmed, it was all in the prostate. And I decided, we said he felt like I was strong enough and young enough and told me what the side effects would be with the surgery. And he believed that I would bounce back healthy. And at the end of the day, man, I was like, to be honest, I felt like even if I couldn't get back there, he said that we have ways to get you an erection. So I was feeling pretty confident, but I just wanted that cancer out of me, bro.
Yeah. Before we talk about it, I'm going to talk about side effects. One question, what would you say to men if they don't feel comfortable with the doctor? What would you tell them to do?
I'm 57, and so I know you somewhere around me. And so, I tell people I come up under the white coat syndrome. We really didn't advocate. We thought the doctor knew it. Like the teachers, we thought they knew it all. Going through this process, I realized they're just people, man. Right. And so what I did learn in this process to be able to advocate for yourself. And if a doctor, like in my first urologist, I was like, bro, you got to go. And so I tell people, fire them. Get somebody that you're going to feel comfortable with. We're not an assembly line. I know it's a healthcare system, but we're not an assembly line. We should have some type of rapport. And you should be asking questions instead of just sitting there and letting them have all the dialogue, right? So I would tell somebody if they're not comfortable with their doctor, definitely, I say fire them, but seek somebody else that you can have that rapport with and feel like you're getting that quality of care.
Yeah, I agree because, I talk about my fraternity brother Ralph and how because he was told to get a second opinion, he was actually first diagnosed. The prognosis was not good. The prognosis was that, it had gotten into his lymph nodes, that he had maybe 18 months to live. He was actually, his affairs in order. He was taking a look at caskets. He was doing all, he had kind of come to understand that this was it. And somebody said when he let everybody know, all the graduate brothers, the older brothers know what was going on with him, got some brothers that were doctors that say, hey, man, did you get a second opinion? And he didn't. And when he did, he found out through further testing that wasn't done on the front end the first time that the cancer had not spread as much as they said to him before, given that they did some minimal discovery, and really didn't do any kind of biopsy on his lymph nodes or anything like that. So I was thinking that had he not reached out, man, he would have just, because his cancer was aggressive. You talk about being 4.8, PSA was 100 when he found out. 100. And he had no clue what that meant. But I think his niece, an oncology nurse, told him to find a urologist right away. But that being said, just I agree with you, man. Be an advocate for yourself. If you don't feel comfortable, you're not getting your questions answered. And I also say if you feel like you're getting pushed in a certain way, a certain treatment, wait and just kind of look what's going to be best for you, because certain docs do certain things. And so they're going to give you all the information, but they're also going to say, well, now, the seeds, because that's what they do. So my thing is and I preach this and I'm sure you do too, be your advocate, understand what's going on and making the decision. So you made the decision to have it removed. Let's talk honestly about this thing called side effects, or did you going into it, did you have any issues before and erections, anything like that? Everything was working good, right?
Yes, everything was working good to my understanding. But afterwards, and you know what? Like you get the information, but you don't really know until you know, right? It's crazy, man. They had the catheter in, and I told them before surgery, like, y'all need to make sure I get a double dose of whatever y'all giving me to knock me out, because that's gonna be a fight if I wake up. And I think I had an anxiety because they told me, like, when it's time to take this catheter out, I had the catheter in 10 days. You have to be able to, urinate by yourself. And if not, we have to put it back in and you won't be asleep. So the whole 10 days, I'm like, yo, you need to be able to pee. Right? And also trying to figure out, you rolling around in this thing, you can't get comfortable. You think you're going to pull it out. I mean, I was having and then it was also triggering my PTSD from the military. So it was a hard time those 10 days. Got the catheter out. I urinated all over. When she pulled it out, the nurse pulled it out. I urinated all over the place. I was like ready to do cartwheels, jumping up. I was like, thank you, Lord. But they told me to bring the pads and fitting boxers. And I ended up wearing loose fitting boxers. Put the pad on there, just thinking I'm like, okay, I'm good. Go home. Once again, my wife said, we got to stop by the store. Got to go to the Walmart. I'm standing at the daggone line. She said, I'll be right back. I'm standing at the line. And the people are looking at me like, what do you, like, and I'm looking at them and I'm like, what are all these people looking at me for? Like, what the hell? My wife walks up, bro. She was like, are you okay? And I'm like, why is everybody looking at me like, bro, I'm peeing. Can't even feel it. Just tears start flowing, bro. She was like, it's okay. And, my wife was like, yeah, he just had surgery, he's on the hip. So that was one of the things. And then the next thing, my wife, in your mind, you think you're just going to bounce right back. That it's going to be the same thing. I'm good. I got this catheter out. Your body feels the same, just a little sore. My wife is very attractive. She comes out of the bathroom, comes in the bedroom. She's naked, and I didn't feel a thing. I mean, my joint didn't even, like, it didn't do nothing. And bro, like, I cried like a baby. And there's no way to explain it. You think but, and she just cried. She just prayed over me, man. She said, yo, let your body heal. And like I tell people, men will do, well, I should say, I'm not going to say all men, but a lot of men will do anything to get an erection back or to get one, right? Where they can have some type of intimate action. Of course, they'll prescribe the Viagra, the Cialis, to get the blood flow back and stuff like that. But I even I heard about these injections. So I talked to my doctor. I was like, yo, what I gotta do? Went to a class, got this stuff, they ordered it, and they giving me education. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I could do that. Finally go back and I go in for my for my follow-up appointment. And they say, now you gotta stick the needle in your I say, stick it where? I'm like, hell no.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've been down that road, even to the point where, I had to draw it up in like an attic or something. I mean, I had to, and then for me, and I've told this story before, they got to get they got to get the thing just right because they don't really know how much to use.
They don't know. You a guinea pig.
Yeah. And so I remember the first time they administered in the doctor's office, I went back to work and man, you talking about hurting. I couldn't move. I had kind of sit at my desk because I had an erection, but it was uncontrollable. It started to hurt. And I was almost on the phone and then it kind of went away. And then I found out if you take like antihistamines or something, you can
Sudafed.
Sudafed, that's right. Thank you. Not antihistamines, right? Sudafed. Yeah, that it'll counteract that. But yeah, I couldn't. I tried. I really did, but I just couldn't. And then you had to really inject in the right place. You couldn't miss where because it. Yeah.
They tell you don't hit no veins. And we all know we got a bunch of veins in our penis, right? So eventually you're gonna do something. And it's crazy, Reg, because I went back to my support group and I was like, yo, y'all cats need to do this right here. This is like an erection on steroids, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it works.
And everybody was asking me for the information. They was like, bruh, that was short lived. Like 2.5 months. Like you just said, the erection was so painful. Like you said, I was popping Sudafeds. I had ice packs to try to get it to go down. It was so painful. Couldn't put no clothes on. Go back to the support group and tell them, nah, y'all don't need to be doing that. And they looking at me like I'm on crack.
Don't go down that road, bro. I'm telling you. It's interesting because I had the same thing. It just wasn't, as they say, it wasn't tenable for me to be able to do that. So how are things now? And how did you go from that particular time to where you are now? What is this? 5 years, 6 years?
Yeah, 6 years. Yeah. So I thank God, man. My wife did tell me, she said, let your body heal. She was very supportive. Always, we're in this together. And sometimes the enemy will get in your head and be like, it gets you thinking different things, right? Because we're human too, So, but I can get an erection probably 85, 90% now on my own. Popping a couple Cialis, one in the morning, one in the evening. But to be honest, man, I'm thankful because when I listen to a lot of these brothers out of now going through the journey, and you think that you went through hell, hearing some of these other stories, they just make you feel. But I also, this is one of my main things I also try to get across to men is that I don't believe that statement out there or that term, this is your manhood, is legit. And I want to say that because that's not real. That's a sickness, right? Because your value's not in your erection, right? If you ask your wife, I mean, it's an important part of your life and the intimacy part. But I think if you ask your children, you ask your homeboys, what's the 5 top reasons why they love you? Erection's not going to be in the equation. So I like to let men know that your value as a man, as a father, as a brother, as a son, as a coworker, your homeboy is not in your erection, right? You have other attributes, you have other qualities that you present, right? That's valid, opposed to, your dick getting hard, right? I just want men to know that, man, that we're kings, man. We're special, and that we have value, and it's not just what's, between our legs, right? Yeah, man. So when I hear that term manhood, it kind of upsets me a little bit. But I'm like, yo, I try to steer away from it because it's not true. If you feed into it, it'll be true and it'll take you down that rabbit hole. But I think we can speak life, encouragement into each other. And I think by having these conversations, I call them real conversations, can help us navigate differently, spiritually, mentally, and physically.
Yeah, because we have a hard time talking about it. Some people that, I mean, I'm pretty transparent, to be honest with you, about my whole journey because somebody was transparent with me, which really helped me kind of get through it. So I try to be as transparent, but I know some folk personally that just won't ever bring it up. I mean, they brought it up on the front end. I've got this, I'm going through this. And then when it's done, I don't bring it up because they've been through it. I figure if they want to talk, they know what I'm doing. They probably watch some of the podcasts or whatever, but I try not to push it on them. But let me ask you this. So you go through all of this. When does this become bigger than you? When does this become an assignment?
I think it was twofold for me. I think I was angry with the men in my life, when I found out. But really, to be honest with you, God was like, "Are you ready to give me 100%, man?" Like, I thought I was having like a nervous breakdown. Yeah. And he said, "Okay." And then he spoke to me, man. He's like, "You're going to start a support group." This was during COVID, the heart of COVID. And I'm like, "Do a what?" I'm like, I was just trying to coast out, retire, working on my VA benefits, to be honest, and just chilling, loving on my grandkids, watching my children become and figure things out, just in a good place. And he's like, "I got something different for you to do." And I had no idea. I had no idea this is what he wanted me to do. And it started with the support groups, and then it started with getting the nonprofit. And I didn't even want to do that because I'm like, no, God just told me to share my story, get some men in a room. And people were saying, "Oh, you need to do this." And then next thing, I was speaking all over the country and just being very transparent in my story. And no matter like these platforms that we do here, I do, or speaking engagements or events we may hold, the center of it was the support group because creating a safe space for men to be able to walk in a space of vulnerability. I think for me, God was saying is the key because prostate cancer in the conversation can bring us to the table, but everything else comes out of that. We start talking about marriages, relationships, stress, depression, all of that. And I think that becomes authentic. And I think if men can see that, then they start to open up a little bit more. When they come back to the next support group, he might not say nothing the first time, but the second time he might say a little bit. And then maybe 6 months down the road, he's telling his whole story. And then guess what he's doing? He's sharing with his community at his job. And so I just feel like I'm my brother's keeper, man. That God, this was my assignment. And, I don't consider it work. I consider it service, man. So if I can help save a life, if I can help start a conversation, because women do it, right? They can be perfect strangers and tell their business. We so like, and I tell people like, if your boy, that's your homie, that's your brother, he don't know that you having marriage issues, he don't know that you having erection issues, then he's not really your boy. Our conversation should be that in depth. They should be able to get to the root, not just surface. Because we should be able to support each other and encourage each other, pray for each other, right? And not just say, "Hey man, let's go grab a beer. Let's just go to the game," and we ain't saying shit, right? We're not having real talk.
No. And you did mention women and they're part of your support group now. Why is that important? How did that happen? How did that come about?
It started with a few years back. The wives were like, "Well, dang, my husband's going to this group. What's going on?" And so then I thought, at least a couple times a year, we can have the wives or the girlfriends come in and we'll call it like a date night. Bring them in, feed them, and just have conversation. Because a lot of times, as if a man doesn't have a support system, he feel like he's going by himself. Who does he go to? And then, with couples, they feel the same thing. This has happened between our walls. We're the only ones going through this. But if we're sharing, we're looking to our left or our right, we hear another couple, this is what they're going through. This is what's stressing them. This is what we found out what works for them. Wow, we're not the only ones. And then it becomes a little network. And then the wives or the girlfriends say, "Oh, let me get your number. Let me get your number." So they might have a connection. And then I just felt like I've had maybe over 10 women that have reached out because their husband won't. So they might show up or they may just reach out and say, "Hey." And then some of them come, or it might be a daughter, right? That her dad or her grandfather or her godfather has it and just wants the information, or how can I get the information, or how can I be in the room and hearing the stories about how can I be a better caregiver, or how can I assist my loved one, helping them get through or opening up or get them to come here. But I always ask the men first, is it okay that we have this female come into our presence? Because I want them to feel like they're safe.
Right. So what have you learned? What have the men taught you through their stories in these support groups? Other than the fact that we're stubborn. That's-
So it's so like we're like over 70 men now, man. And I learned something. And I tell you, it's allowed me to start veteran support groups, women with cancer support groups as well. But I've learned humility, bro. I've learned vulnerability. I learned transparency. I learned strength, compassion, even on a greater level. And it's good for me because, being a host, you figure like you gotta have the strength, you gotta follow up with everybody, invite everybody, you doing all the legwork, but you see God working. Like I see so many men from when they first walked into the room to maybe a year later, 2 years later, and just seeing the confidence or the encouragement or seeing them fight through or share with somebody else. Well, before they wouldn't.
they were just going at it alone, and like, they wouldn't even talk to their significant other if they have one or wife. They just we just internalize it.
Absolutely. So I look around and none of these men I grew up with, none of these men are my homeboys, but they're my brothers, right? And I always go back to if I wasn't being obedient to what God called me to do, I just give him the glory. I just trust him and sit back. And people like always like you're always checking on us, you're always following up with us, you're always texting us or encouraging us. And I'm like, bro, this is a ministry, bro. This is it's not me, it's him. He's just using me.
Right. And he'll make a way. Yeah, definitely will make a way.
Yeah, he'll make a way. So I say that with you too, man. Like I was scared of a nonprofit. I was scared to do the support groups at first. I was scared to speak across the country. I was scared to ask for sponsorships. Didn't know. Like the only fundraising I did was in sports or when my kids was in the Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, that type of stuff. But on a greater level, but what you're doing is important. I want you to know that when I met you, I felt it, right? I felt your passion. I felt what you were doing in your heart. And I realized in this space that God makes connections. I don't want you to get discouraged. I want you to continue to be encouraged because God always provides, man. He always shows up and he shows out. And just let people continue to see God in you, brother. Absolutely, man. I'm proud of you, man. Proud of you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. You're an inspiration. I'm telling you, because everything that you do comes from the heart. I can sense that too. And when somebody's kind of, they're doing it not really into it and hoping that they can get a big grant or do something, with the funding and all this other stuff. But you really have to, it's got to be in your heart because this is not something that I tell people all the time. Even with this podcast, it's on YouTube. And sometimes I look at the numbers, I'm like, oh my goodness. And my wife's like, you know what? If it's 2 people, those 2 people needed to hear this message. And this is not something that you're trying to do with clickbait and all of that. This is not what this is. You're not showing a lion trying to eat a boa constrictor. It's just, this is not what this is. I had to kind of, like, yeah, you're right. Because to be honest with you, it is one by one. If it wasn't for Ralph, I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be here. I don't even know if I would have been diagnosed or if I would have taken it serious, right? Even if my PS, but I will say I had a fantastic primary care physician. My medical team, I had a brother that was my doctor for 30, 40 years almost. So he knew all about me and I trusted him. He's like, this is not something we're going to wait on. We need to go ahead and check. This is a urologist you need to go to, and this is what you need to do. But that being said, because I was fortunate, 2 questions as we kind of wrap up. So what would you say to somebody, your brother's listening to this right now? I ain't know about those PSA tests. I'm not going to do it. And what is the one decision you hope men make from listening to this right now?
I would say a real man can walk in vulnerability, right? A real man. Like I was that man, like we talked about in the beginning, Marine, combat veteran, law enforcement background, and all of that, right? That will kill you. That will put you 6 feet under. That pride, that I'm not letting nobody stick the finger in my butt, getting a digital exam. That will kill you. And I would say also that we just have to encourage each other, right? And if you're scared to go, I'll go with you. I'll support you, encourage you. You don't have to suffer in silence. And that's what I want men to know. We don't have to suffer in silence.
And that leads me to your support group. And how can we connect? How can men, women connect with you to learn more and be a part?
So I'm very transparent, man. Like our website is www.courageandstrengthtofight.com. My number is 678-333-2437. And I say that because I don't take this lightly. This is personal. And whoever needs to reach out, whether they're here in Atlanta, overseas, West Coast, up north, whatever, man, I'm here. And once we connected, I consider you family. And I say that sincerely. If I can help save a life, man, it means I'm doing my job.
We'll also have your website and everything in our show notes as well, so people can refer back. Now, I know you had a walk, a fundraiser kind of awareness event. I know you have your groups that come together. What's in store for 2026? What do you hope to accomplish? What do you like to accomplish? What does the Lord put on your heart to do in 2026?
Normally, I try to do one indoor event, try to do the walk, but 2026, he's kind of stretching me a little bit. So we're going to do a weekend conference. I'm looking forward to that. It'll be sometime May or June. We've done our indoor events at the gathering spot downtown. So I'm looking to do it there again. And then in September, do the walk, which will be our 5th annual walk in 2026. We have a good time. Continue to do the support groups, man. That's the meat and the potatoes. And then whatever else God got me to do, man, wherever else he calls me to go, I'm just looking forward to doing this service, man. My community, my family, and helping brothers navigate this journey.
Well, we appreciate you, man. And please share, as you have been doing with the support groups. I'm going to have to get out I'd love to join the circle and, and tell my story. So I'm looking forward to doing that and getting the word out. So anything I can do, just let me know. I'm here for you.
Likewise, brother. That goes both ways. You know that.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. And we hooked up at a community event. So those kinds of things, I get to meet other people doing other things. And I think, this community is so important in getting the word out. So we appreciate you. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year. And
appreciate you too, man. Much love and respect back to you. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna have you on again, and we had talked about even doing a Facebook group or some things. I mean, let's connect. So we're gonna have that conversation in 2026.
Definitely. I wanted to say before we get off, man, I thank you. I appreciate you because the first time we were supposed to connect, we lost our grandbaby, and just what you poured into me, brother, it meant the world. So I ain't forgot. Thank you.
Thank you, man. I'm in prayer every day, and I'm sure that's the sentiment of everybody that's watching. So we're here for you, man. We're here for you. All right, David, we'll be in touch. Appreciate you, man.
All right, man.
So I want to thank David for his honesty, his courage, his commitment to breaking the silence. Just a great, great brother that's doing some wonderful things in a difficult environment, which is men and our stubbornness and trying to break through that facade, that veneer that we all have, and really get to the core so that we can, so men can be helped. And conversations, that's the way to do it. And when you have this situation, this prostate cancer journey. So happy holidays to David and to everybody. We encourage you to learn, courage and strength to fight. The links will be in our show notes, as we said before. We'll also keep you updated with all of the activities that this organization will be doing in 2026. And hopefully we'll be a part of that as well. I want to thank you and everyone who joined us live. This is definitely a journey that we're all taking together. And if this episode resonated with you, please don't keep it to yourself. Don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a brother. Like, subscribe, and help this message travel. If You Are My Brothers is a 501c3 nonprofit project of Straight Street Media. And Straight Street Media is dedicated to turning, as well as this particular project, If You Are My Brothers, is turning prostate cancer awareness into health action. And there are ways that you can support our effort. There also will be in our show notes as well. And we have a new one, the text to give. So there are 3 or 4 different ways for you to give. You can go to our website. You can also, if you want to mail us a money order or check, you can do that. That's the P.O. box is there. And next time around, we will have the text to give as well that you can do on your phone. So we appreciate all of the individuals, everybody that's made a contribution, that supported us in this effort. And it's so important because we do have that challenge grant that's in place for our year-end campaign, which ends December 31st. We're trying to match $6,500 that three of our donors have come together to say, hey, here's some funding, but we want to encourage everybody else to match it in order for us to get it. So the word's out there, the challenge is out there. So we appreciate you in advance for making your contribution before the end of the year. And remember that when you do make a contribution, you get this, it's my sales pitch now, all right? Get your mug here, commemorative If You Are My Brother's mug. We also have a drawing that we'll be doing at the end of the year for everybody that's made a contribution or had attended any of our events. You're all going to be thrown in the hopper to get this original painting that Cecil Bernard, who is a world-renowned artist who lives here in Atlanta, has taken our logo and he's done his sort of rendition of the logo in painting, original. You'll have that. It's signed. And hopefully we can maybe get it framed for you. I don't know. We're going to try to do that. But that drawing will happen at the end of the month. So you want to stay tuned for that. And we appreciate always the help that we get from Cecil, and also want to mention Atlanta Brand Central for donating the mugs. They have donated the mugs, Daryl Armstrong and his people. We appreciate that. Past episodes are archived on our YouTube channel. You can always go there. All of this information will be in the show notes as well for audio and video. And we want to thank, as we close out the year in this particular episode, Danny, as we call him, Garcia Pozo, who is the producer of our podcast. He's in the background clicking all the buttons. And also Zach Reynolds at Borkhouse Productions for our intro. Remember, this podcast, one more time, is not a replacement for medical advice. Always talk to your healthcare providers. I want to mention that, particularly as we start a new year. So all of these, you got your physicals set up, you're ready. Make sure PSA is a part of that, men, and that you know that number and you know the number from last year and you keep track of it. I want to tell you, have a safe, blessed holiday. Join us in the new year. We've got some great episodes coming in 2026, Thursday, January the 8th. And as we say in the South, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, we'll see you on the other side. And that's the day before my birthday. So, it's kind of a pre-birthday celebration, our first episode in 2026. So until next time, we just always want to remind you, if you are my brothers, you will share this message. Take care. Stay healthy. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. Peace.